I don't know about you, but is this working? Can you hear me okay? I don't know about you, but I'm always glad when sacrament meeting starts without a lot of announcements. So for future affirmations, let's try and set a good model. The theme of this conference today and tomorrow and the next day is New Frontiers. More than 50 years ago, when John F. Kennedy gave his acceptance speech at the Democratic National Convention in Los Angeles, he said, quote, "We stand today on the edge of a new frontier, the frontier of unknown opportunities and perils, the frontier of unfulfilled hopes and unfulfilled dreams," end of quote. These words could certainly apply to where Mormons are today in relation to our LGBT brothers and sisters. I hope we can grasp the unknown opportunities, and I hope we have learned enough from our past mistakes to avoid the unknown perils. Certainly there are unfulfilled hopes and dreams for all of us, although I believe that many of us are far more hopeful today than we have been for a very long time, and that we continue to dream of even a better world. What is surprising about the past decade is not only how much improvement has been made, but how the pace of improvement has accelerated. Proposition 8 was only 5 years ago, and yet in many ways, as a church and as a culture, we have seen a sea change in terms of church policy and cultural acceptance of gay men and lesbians. But we clearly are not yet where we need to be. Kennedy went on to speak of the frontiers of uncharted areas and unsolved problems. While he was speaking of science and space in the first instance and of war and peace in the second, I think we can speak of uncharted areas of psychology and religion and unsolved problems of love and hate. His third category is something we have in common, the frontier of, quote, unconquered problems of ignorance and injustice. Like many of my generation, I was buoyed by Kennedy's speech, even though at the time, dare I admit it, I was a Nixon Republican. That's what going to BYU did to you in those days. In those days, I thought it was necessary to be a Republican to get a temple recommended. I soon repented, however, and was caught up in the hopes and dreams of my generation. Looking back at Kennedy's speech, I think we can agree that we have made progress in many areas, including in areas of race and gender. The Democratic platform in 1960 was the rights of man, the civil and other rights essential to the dignity of all men and women. One group not included in that particular platform were the men and women whose sexual identity and orientation led them to desire intimacy with those of their own gender. That particular group and its rights are still under siege, and it has fallen to those of us of the present generation to fight for their full rights. Those of us privileged to be caught up in the hope of the generation of the 60s and 70s were inspired by many who stepped forward to end segregation, to fight for equality of minorities and women, to end war, and establish peace. Still a little bit of work to be done in that area. People like Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Betty Friedan, Gloria Steinem, Eugene McCarthy, and many others took seriously President Kennedy's charge that as Americans, we should ask what we could do for our country. The current fight for the equality and dignity of our gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender brothers and sisters, we have been blessed by those whose courage, dedication, and vision, whose personal and spiritual dedication have moved us forward, often against the tide of institutional resistance and the intransigence of public opinion, and in the face of significant obstacles. One of those whom I think history will regard as a hero for our times is Dr. Caitlin Ryan, the director of the Family Acceptance Project and the executive producer of the film we're about to see. Dr. Ryan is highly and rightly respected researcher and practitioner who has been a pioneer in the field of LGBT health and well-being for nearly 4 decades. Her contributions have been recognized by many professional organizations and groups, and her approach to promoting wellness and reducing health risks and negative social outcomes, such as suicide and homelessness for LGBT young people, is changing the paradigm of care for how LGBT young people are served across disciplines and healthcare systems. Her work with families and faith communities is opening new ways for families and congregations to support LGBT people in the context of religious belief and values. She has been honored by the nation's leading mental health organizations, including the American Psychiatric Association, which recently presented her with its Distinguished Scientific Contribution Award. Her research and new approach to family-based care is being utilized across the United States and in a number of other countries, and by clergy and religious leaders and other religious organizations. When I introduced Dr. Ryan at last month's Sunstone Symposium, I observed that in its nearly 2 centuries, Mormonism has survived and even thrived through the help of friends, other believers who believe in us and have sacrificed to help and serve us. Caitlin Ryan is such a friend. It has been a particular pleasure for me to be her collaborator. I'm dropping everything. Her collaborator on this booklet, Supporting Families, Healthy Children, Helping Latter-day Saint Families with Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Children. This booklet is being used throughout the church and is a model for other churches who are going to be developing programs similar to the one that Dr. Ryan has developed. This booklet is available, I believe, in the entry there for those of you who would like to get one. Kayla is also the executive producer of this film that we will see this evening. Caitlin's interest in producing the booklet and the film is motivated in large part by her recognition, and I think this is really important for us, of the unique role of families in Mormon theology and practice. It is her hope that the application of the research she has been doing on LGBT children and adolescents will inspire other faith traditions to adopt these same principles and thus affirm, protect, and bless their LGBT individuals and families. She has started doing similar work with other religious groups, as I mentioned. Believing as we do that the Holy Spirit can inspire anyone who does God's work, I believe that Caitlin's work has been so inspired. The ways in which her important research is helping Latter-day Saint families and leaders can be seen, I believe, as heaven-directed. Caitlin has devoted many thousands of hours and invested hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring her research to Latter-day Saints and to help us to deal with the issue in a more enlightened and more Christ-centered way. It is my hope that as Latter-day Saints, we not only will recognize the importance of Dr. Ryan's work for us, that we will find ways to be as gracious and as generous with her as she has been with us, especially in producing this film and this booklet. I'll say a few words in the evening about how you might be able to do that. In the meantime, as you watch the film and listen to the panel participants, consider how much you might be able to contribute personally and how you can apply what you have learned from her research in your own lives, as well as those in your families, friends, and congregations. President Kennedy ended his speech in 1960 with these words from the book of Isaiah, quote, "They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary." He added, "As we face the coming challenge, we too shall wait upon the Lord, and we too shall wait upon the Lord, and ask that he renew our strength. Then shall we be equal to the test. Then shall we not be weary. Then shall we prevail." May that also be true of us. In preparation for seeing the film, I'd like to ask Dr. Ryan to say a few words about the research and the Family Acceptance Project as it relates to this film, especially her research on the profound differences that she and her colleagues have found between families who are accepting and families who are rejecting of their LGBT children. After Dr. Ryan's remarks, we'll see the film. Following the film, we'll ask two of the stars, Wendy and Tom. I put quotes around it, Tom, so we can get to come up and join the panel, so you'll have an opportunity to ask them and Dr. Ryan any questions relating to the film or her research or what's going on in their lives right now, and then we'll hopefully have some time for you to ask questions. Dr. Ryan.
Thanks, Bob.